Joe, it's an honor and pleasure to interview you today. In the field of anti-aging and cosmetics, I understand you are heavily involved with your team and your innovations. So tell us a little bit about your background, Joe.
Well, thanks, Bas. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you today. And my background essentially is at the very beginning of my career, I was very much involved in the drug industry, where I was involved in drug discovery and directing a team of scientists trying to and making an attempt to develop drugs for a variety of diseases. That was the first half of my career. But now in the second half of my career, I'm more interested in looking at the whole concept of wellness and how to maintain nutritional health. Our scientists are far more interested in understanding how genes can act as sources of aging and more in the area of nutrition rather than in the area of diseases. It is clear to us that genes are ultimately very much involved and associated in the aging process and how they can actually impact and have an influence on how we age. The concept of nutrigenomics is coming into play now, and we have to understand the genetic influence on the aging process.
The obesity epidemic that's killing America right now is a huge problem, as we know.
Yes, Bas, and we in Nu Skin Enterprises, in our area of interest and research, is focusing on healthy aging. And part and parcel of this whole overall concept of healthy aging is the ability to manage your weight in a healthy manner. We are supporting weight management rather than obesity. And in that area, once again, we are beginning to understand there is some ingredients, natural ingredients, that can actually influence what we call gene expression. And we are doing a lot of studies and a lot of research together with our collaborators to understand how genes can have an association with weight management.
So tell us a little bit about gene expression, Joe.
Well, gene expression is a field of research where it describes how genes are being activated. These are now regular healthy genes. We're not talking about structurally defective genes or talking about mutated genes. We are talking the genes that all of us have and how we can influence their expression. Fundamentally, genes can only do one thing and one thing only. When they express themselves or when they are activated or become active, they make the result of that activation of or expression is the production of a protein. For example, a protein can be an enzyme, a protein can be a signaling molecule inside the cell, a protein can be obviously part and parcel of the structure of a cell. So they serve absolutely critical functions in the body. So, and the only way that these proteins can be found or can be produced in the body is via some changes in gene expression. And that is why we are so interested in seeing how genes can express themselves.
So what are the ingredients that can make this gene expression happen?
Our objective and our mission in Nu Skin Enterprises is really looking at natural ingredients. It's about looking at micronutrients, for example, or for that matter, macronutrients as well, and how these nutrients can influence gene expression. The body cannot function without some changes in gene expression profiles, whether they are changes in a certain cluster of genes, as we call it, or when the body meets a change in nutrients, whether it's a micronutrient or a macronutrient. And that change we see happens during an aging process. So clearly something is happening at the genetic level. And we call this concept or the genetic approach ageLOC. That's a term that we coined to describe our approach. And we call these gene expression changes that is happening as a type of change in a source of aging. That is what ageLOC is about. Rather than looking at symptoms of aging, we are now going deeper and drilling down deeper into the aging process and looking and trying to identify these sources of aging.
how can you document the gene expression changes? Do you have a way of documenting that?
Yes, there's now emerging technologies we are incorporating and using in this so-called ageLOC approach. There's now technology that we call it a gene chip technology. For intents and purposes, this is literally very akin and similar to a computer chip. It's a silicon wafer where we can put fragments of the DNA onto the chip, and by using this DNA chip technology, we can literally assess each and every gene in the human genome in terms of how they change over time and what are the changes observed, for example, in a young person versus gene expression changes that occur in an older person. So by using this gene chip technology, we can literally track, if you will, the aging process in the body and see over time how the gene expression profile is affected in the presence of ingredients that we are interested in, and how we can evaluate whether they have a positive influence on the gene expression profile between over the aging process. We can use a blend of ingredients and look at that particular mixture to see how they influence the gene expression profile that occurs during the course of the aging process.
Okay, so from what you're saying, I understand you studied an awful lot of ingredients that are beneficial for a positive change in the gene expression. And with the permutations, combinations of these ingredients that you used, you ultimately came up with 2 or 3 ingredients, and then you could do a pre and post gene sequencing to showing the gene expression. Is that correct?
What we are interested in is the profile of several genes, and not just focusing on gene expression changes that occur in a single gene. Okay, so because we now know that the aging process is not about changes that occur in a single gene. A single gene doesn't explain all the things that are happening in the aging process. It's the combination of the summary of changes of multiple genes happening simultaneously during the aging process that is important to us. It's almost like with our approach, it's to seek and to identify the genetic fingerprint of several hundred, if not 1,000 genes out of the 23,000 genes in the human genome, and looking at the profile in total, together, and see how that multiple gene profile can be affected by a variety of ingredients, and trying to match, if you will, a profile that is closest to that you can see during a youthful state, we call it.
Now, do you believe that eventually the average person out there in the community, a gene profile with nutrigenomics that we are talking about, the epigenetic science that we are involved in the wellness industry and in the anti-aging industry, is that something that you will be offering soon?
We have devised an approach using all these various technologies that are coming out from the genetic world, if you will, and putting them together in a unique and differentiated approach. Let me explain what I mean by that. Mm-hmm. For intents and purposes, this ageLOC approach that we are currently using to gain insights during the product development process, during this anti-aging product development process, is genetic understanding that is based on 30 years worth of research from our scientific collaborators. Okay. And fundamentally, that 30 years of experience is actually culled from one particular intervention that has been shown and pretty well validated to have a positive influence on the aging process. This intervention is called caloric restriction. Okay. Many studies have now shown, in general, for intents and purposes, that this caloric restriction intervention has a powerful influence in terms of how you age. This caloric restriction research has been very helpful to design this approach that is so relevant in understanding and gaining genetic insights into the aging process. This is a very, very novel approach to understanding aging process, and from that particular approach we are getting very profound insights how we can develop the next generation of anti-aging products. We're using gene expression science to gain insights so that from those insights we have a much better handle how the next generation of anti-aging products should look like. We're far more interested to see whether we can develop the next generation of anti-aging products that can address the sources of aging. That's a key difference between what we are doing now and what we did, 20 years ago, for example.
Essentially, therefore, what you are doing is something that nobody has ever done before. Documenting the gene expression and the changes that you can now actually verify with gene expression and gene chips, correct?
That's correct.
Well, that's unbelievable science fiction, as it were, but now it is real, true science in front of us.
Yeah. Having now an incredible gene tool to use to dissect the genetic mechanisms associated with weight management, it's very powerful.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. We need people like you for the future. Keep up the good work.
Thanks so much, Bas.